Okay, hi everyone. So much happening, million movies, all the popcorn movies are about to come out. But one of the things which has interested me lately is how Netflix is starting to be this place where they're doing some experiments with storytelling, whether it be just one-off movies or TV series. And one of my great interests as I was growing up, whether it was reading, computer games, role playing, was the world of cyberpunk. I'm a big William Gibson fan, also Neil Stevenson, George Alec Effinger, really incredibly influential storytellers, and then on top of that, Ridley Scott, Blade Runner, and etc. And so Netflix has tried to gone into this cyberpunk world. It's kind of like fantasy was owned for a long time by the Game of Thrones franchise, and so they are looking for their next big hit. And so they've gone into cyberpunk, which, if you think about it, you often can tell a story and just use a lot of green screen flourishes as opposed to Game of Thrones, where you do need like all these costumes and stuff, and you can set a story in the future. So they've just had two independent productions, and one was Mute and one was Altered Carbon. So I'll talk about Mute first. So Mute is a one-off film by Duncan Jones. Now Duncan Jones is really beloved by the geek community because he made a movie called Moon, which everyone quite liked, but then he did Source Code, which I actually think is his best work. World of Warcraft, which was an abomination, but as I said, a lot of great geek credibility, and now he's done Mute. And you really have to ask the question now, can he direct at all? Because each of those projects has had major flaws, and they've gotten worse. And Mute is almost unwatchable. It is this weird mishmash. I mean, it really is bad at every level, which is kind of rare. You don't see, the acting is bad. So he gets the worst performance from Skarsgård, who plays the main character, Leo, that I've ever seen. He gets the worst performance from Paul Rudd. Like, Paul Rudd is just charisma. Like, you watch Ant-Man, he's just great. He plays this horrible person, but like, we all watch stuff with horrible people in it, and you kind of just go, oh God, I should hate that guy, but he's so charismatic, or she is so, badass, that you kind of still go for the villain. He is just horrible. Justin Theroux plays this offsider who's also horrible. So all the acting is atrocious. The green screen and Blade Runner-ish kind of stuff, not that great. And then it's set in Berlin in 40 years from now, but he's an Amish character. This is presented in the first 10 seconds. It's almost like he's trying to do like Casablanca in the future, but he can't do it. It is horrible. Do not watch it. And I was really upset by that, because I really thought this is an interesting thing that they're going to do cyberpunk. The other thing that they did was Altered Carbon. Now, Altered Carbon is based on a book by, and I'm just going to make sure I get the name right, Richard K. Morgan. And it was created, and this, got no chance, it was created by Aleta Kalogridis. Now, I don't know this person's work. I'm not as great on TV producers and showrunners as I am on directors. And so it's a 10-part series based on Morgan's work. And this is much more successful. It has got some problems, but the problems are pretty minor. So we're going to talk about that now. So an old trope in cyberpunk is you take really detective fiction from the 40s, think of The Big Sleep and Humphrey Bogart, and then you set it in the future. Most famously, Blade Runner does this with the voiceovers and Tour Noir. So they do something a little bit similar. The beginning of the story is that they've resurrected, and resurrections in this world are a little bit different in that they've got two main concepts which are really interesting, and that is that you've got a cortical stack, and that is basically like a disc, and it sits in the back of your neck, and that is always recording and downloading your consciousness. And as long as that stays intact, that can be removed and placed into another body, a synthetic body, a human body, whatever. And the human bodies become known as sleeves, because over hundreds of years, really the concept of death and immortality start to blend, because of course you could have numerous sleeves and you could live forever in theory. And a group, an elite level of society basically are now immortal, and because of all those years, they're super wealthy. So into this world, there's been a murder. James Purefoy, who's quite a good actor, plays this oligarch who can do whatever he wants, super wealthy, and one of his sleeves has been murdered. And he resurrects Takeshi Kovacs, played by Kanane, what's Kanane's name? Joel Kanane, to investigate the murder. And the reason why he's got this guy is a legendary envoy. And envoys have been banned, they're all being killed because they did a revolution against the government. But they're also known for just being incredible fighters, but also super smart and able to, do almost superhuman things, like a Sherlock Holmes kind of thing. Sherlock Holmes meets the Matrix kind of thing, because they're also good with VR and stuff like that. So they're kind of banned, they shouldn't exist. He gets one because he wants the envoy to investigate his murder. And because he's so super wealthy and powerful, they're able to do it. So it's a really nice conceit to begin with. And the first 3 or so episodes are really all about investigating the murder. And actually, I found that part a little bit, by the book and not that great. Although one thing is the world looks great, the world building is good. I've already, talked about the sleeves and stuff. So all that part, which is about, what kind of world they're inhabiting, is really, really good. But the actual murder stuff, I was going, they're really just trying to, bring in all the new characters and just explain everything, and it gets a bit cumbersome. Soon they kind of get rid of that to a certain degree. I mean, it's still in the overarching story, but then there's like 6 more episodes which really look at the world and start to look at the concepts of, what does religion mean in a world like this? What is the role of how do you have equality in a world like this where people can live forever? And it starts to do a lot more interesting things. The acting across the board is really quite good. And again, these are actors that I don't know that well, but Martha Higada plays Kristen Ortega, and she's like the main badass kind of Latin female detective who they kind of have to ally with eventually. And scene stealer late in the series, like in the late half, is Dishan Lachman. You might know from The Dollhouse, where she was not that great, and she's really, really good in this. And she plays, everyone's got these weird names, I got to look at them, Raylene Kawahara. And she's an interesting character, and she comes in and she's just incredible with the sword, and the action is great. The choreography is fantastic. Sometimes it's just beat for beat, but I'd say every second episode they have one full-on set piece, and it is really, really good. And just as a bit of an Easter egg for old-time geeks, there's a character called Carnage, and you'll recognize straight away, you'll go, I know that voice, I know that kind of facial structure. And it's played by Matt Frewer. And Matt Frewer is famous in Nerd World for being playing this kind of first character who was an actor but animated in a computer world, and that character was Max Headroom. And in the 80s, when there wasn't as much kind of geek stuff on normal TV, Max Headroom was on TV, and it was really interesting and I thought Frewer was really quite good actually. So you've got this really interesting world, great action, some interesting because Cyberpunk really works when it's using the future to look at very typical human issues and then pushing the envelope about what it means to be human. Is it that you've got your human consciousness? Is it your body? Is it okay to be in a stack? What happens to you if you die? So I found this all really quite good stuff. The scene stealer for sure is a guy called Chris Connor, who I don't really know, and he plays Edgar Allan Poe. And you're going, what the hell are you talking about? How is Edgar Allan Poe coming in? So very early on, the main guy, Rabatsch, he goes to a really what is called like an old school AI hotel. And he goes in there and no one's been in there for 50 years. And there's this guy who I instantly recognize as being like an Edgar Allan Poe avatar. And this guy goes, well, do you want the full treatment? And by making this deal with this AI, Rabatsch, you kind of must know a little bit more about what they used to be able to do. He then gets this AI ally, which is really interesting because if you think about Cyberpunk, well, there's the action between all the humans, but there's also everything's automated and he's got this kind of other ally, and he just really has got a great acting style, but it's also just so out of left field. I really enjoyed that aspect of it. So Cyberpunk on Netflix, what do we think? Do not watch Mute. It is shockingly bad. Altered Carbon, I think, is quite good if Cyberpunk is your cup of tea. If it isn't your cup of tea, it'd be interesting to see if you can get over the hump of the first 3 episodes. It does resolve. It could be a standalone. The good thing about it is because of, as I explained, sleeves and stuff, you could really be telling stories in this world for ages. And Morgan has said that he's about to release another book in that world this year. So maybe that's going to be the next series. So that's it for today. I'm going to be back very soon because I've been waiting, and today in Australia, Annihilation, the great big new, I don't know what you call it, interesting kind of cyber meets Cthulhu movie comes out on Netflix. We didn't get it in theaters here. So I'm going to watch that and I'll review that later in the week. So as usual, if you like what I'm doing, subscribe, hit the button, the bell button, and you then always know what I'm doing. Hit the like button if you like, because then it spreads, using the Google algorithm. And I'm on Twitter at Guru Eden. So I'll talk to you later. Bye.